What's going on YouTube? I am Darian, the Bowtie Fragrance Guy on the Fashion and Fragrance channel. So, if fashion and fragrance matter to you, that means if you love looking good and smelling good, I think you found the right channel, man. I hope you won't mind subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit the bell icon so that way when I upload new content, you'll get notified. Before I jump into today's topic, I know you guys see what I am adorned in today. This sweatshirt or sweater slash jacket that you're seeing right now. This, guys, today is my Founders Day. So shout out to all the oh so pretty brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Today is our Founders Day. On this day, January 5th, 1911, some very distinguished gentlemen got together on the campus of Indiana University and founded the best freaking organization in the world that was established on the foundation of achievement in every field of human endeavor. So we've been achieving ever since 1911, man, and we ain't trying to stop now. So again, shout out to all of my brothers of the noble clan of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Yo, baby, yo. Now let's go on ahead and keep the party going. So on today's video, guys, I've been doing some thinking here, right? I've been doing some thinking, and you know what I've thought about? I've thought about the fact that not all fragrances, of course, are created equal. And there's always a general consensus on some things, but there's always outliers. There's always anecdotal situations where things are just different than they normally are. The general consensus is that, on average, niche fragrances are just kind of better than designer fragrances. I understand, I hear you. I know everybody doesn't think that way, but that is the general consensus. Now, I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but just in case you didn't know, designer fragrances are typically done by companies like Tom Ford, Chanel, Christian Dior, just to name a few, YSL. And they make things other than fragrances. So they may make clothing or accessories, etc. Niche fragrances are done by companies that only focus on fragrances. They make nothing else. Their specialty and their calling card is fragrances. And 9 times out of 10, the general consensus is that a lot of times companies will make the designer fragrances to be a little bit more mass appealing, less creative, not quite as high quality ingredients, etc., where niche is more creative, higher quality ingredients, hence the higher price tag. Along with that, I think the general consensus also is that niche fragrances are, on average, a little bit better. And I wouldn't say that I disagree with that sentiment, but today I want to tell you guys about 10 designer fragrances, in my opinion, that are better than a lot of niche fragrances. Or if not better, they are just as good as a lot of the niche fragrances out there on the market. So I want to share those 10 designer fragrances with you. So if you want to see what's on this list, and you guys know the routine, keep it locked right here. Let's get it. I'm not doing that today. We'll do this. Yo. I'll be right back.
The Bowtie Fragrance Guy.
All right, guys, we're back. Thank you so much for keeping it locked in. Let's go ahead and jump into this video. For a quick point of order, some of the things that I considered when I actually chose the fragrances for this list was creativity, what I perceive to be as very well done, high quality ingredients in the fragrance, and also performance to some extent. Performance is one of those things that kind of matter as well. Sometimes, I actually looked at how these fragrances kind of develop and the whole nine. So a lot of the things and the elements that I think the average person will look for in a great fragrance are the things that I took into consideration for the fragrances on this list. So with that being said, I want to do this one first because it's discontinued. And this fragrance is from a designer house called Robert Graham. And the name of this fragrance is called Valor. Valor, here's the bottle. Now, why did they discontinue this fragrance? I have no idea, but this is a phenomenal amber coffee fragrance. Now, I actually saw this fragrance as well as another one from this brand called Courage a few years back in the rack stores when they were when they were phasing them out. And I had them in my cart, in my buggy, and I put them back. And I so regretted that I did when I found out it was discontinued, because I could have got them at a decent price. I think they were around $70, $60, somewhere around that. But this is such a good coffee fragrance for what you're gonna pay. And when I compare this to a lot of the other niche fragrances that are centered around the note of coffee, this really stacks up with a lot of those fragrances. Not all of them. So I'm not saying that these designer fragrances are better than any niche fragrance out there. I'm just saying on average, this is as good or better than a lot of fragrances that are niche that are centered around the note of coffee. So I actually had the fortune of having a friend of mine from my hometown that actually was selling this, and he reached out to me, and without hesitation, I bought it from him for a very good price. I think I might have paid $50 or $60, what I would have paid for it back then. But anyway, amazing amber coffee fragrance. Again, it's a designer brand, and unfortunately this is discontinued, but if you can find it, this is just as good as any niche coffee fragrance. And it's from the house of Robert Graham. Again, this is called Valor. Now, I think this next one should probably come as no surprise to a lot of people that have put their nose on this fragrance. It's from the house of Christian Dior, and this is Dior Homme Parfum. Dior Homme Parfum, and this is the OG stuff right here. Again, I've heard that the new stuff is just as good, but I cannot speak for it. I cannot vouch for it because I haven't smelled it. But my goodness, man. Listen, this thing has the whole iris thing that you get from the original and from Dior Homme Intense and all that stuff, but they amped up a nice leather note in here, and it just took this DNA to the next level when you talk about creativity. So definitely the quality is there. There are certain designer fragrance brands to me that pretty much 9 times out of 10 deliver on the quality aspect, and Christian Dior is one of those houses. But this is so creative. You get great performance. And again, when you talk about, leather fragrances or iris-based fragrances that are niche, I think this pretty much stacks up with most of them out there. So the second fragrance that I want to, of course, mention is from the house of Christian Dior. And this is Dior Homme Parfum. All right, so this next fragrance is from a designer brand that I love. It's from the house of Tom Ford. And it's this beauty right here, man. Ombre Leather. Ombre Leather. This is so good. Again, you have other leather fragrances out there, and this, I guess technically Tuscan leather is a designer fragrance because it's Tom Ford, but this Tuscan leather, they're as good as any niche fragrance out there that's centered around a note of leather. I love this one. Again, performance, quality, everything is there when you really look at this fragrance right here. I know a lot of people are fans of Tuscan leather, they're fans of ombre leather, and I can see why. They're good. I mean, it's that simple. And to me, this is a little bit less, the leather isn't as pronounced in this one as it is in Tuscan leather. And it doesn't have that slight little petrol thing that, kind of comes from an animalic, more leather kind of accord that you find in Tuscan leather. This one a little bit more toned down, a little bit more sweet. And again, it's as good as it gets, man, when you talk about leather fragrances. So, third fragrance that I want to mention is from the house of Tom Ford, and again, this one's called Ombre Leather. All right, guys, the next fragrance actually comes from the house of Tom Ford as well. These are not in any particular order, so it's just as I reach down and pick these up. But this one, man, Noir Extreme Parfum. This one released this year, and man, this stuff is just amazing. You talk about creativity, the Kofi. The original actually, of course, had the Kofi. And I think they made this DNA even more creative, even more niche-like by adding some of those more deeper, warmer notes. Most importantly, or most prominently, the note of a leather as well in this one. Again, just kind of made the DNA even more sophisticated. I'm not even saying even better because I love the original so much, but this definitely has what most people consider that niche quality. So check it out. It's from the house of Tom Ford as well. This is Noir Extreme Parfum. All right, guys, this next fragrance actually comes from the brand Costume National, and this fragrance is called Soul. This is called Soul. And this fragrance right here is, to me, is kind of centered around a note of oud. And it kind of, in a way, comes across as a typical oud rose fragrance. But it's not, it's a little bit fresher. That's the best way for me to describe it. This fragrance is a little bit fresher. And that's because it doesn't actually contain a note of rose. Now, there is pink pepper in here, and I'm sure the rosy nuance that I'm getting is coming from the pink pepper, except for, again, it's a little bit fresher than the typical rose oud fragrance that you're going to come in contact with. This also features note of cardamom. There's some vanilla in here, some patchouli. So again, if you talk about designer fragrances, this thing right here is absolutely fantastic. It is dynamite. It is quality through and through. And if you love rose oud fragrances, this is as good as it gets on a designer level. And again, as the theme of the list is, it competes with a lot of those oud fragrances that are niche. A well done fragrance from Costume National. Put your nose on this, guys. If you love oud, this one is called Costume National Soul. All right, guys, this next fragrance actually comes from the house of Maison Margiela. Yep, you guessed it. This is by the Fireplace. By the Fireplace, and this is good as any other smoky vanilla fragrance out there on the market. You talk about a fragrance that, you know, opened a lot of people's eyes and caught a lot of people's attention when it came out. This fragrance was highly touted. It was highly talked about and discussed for good reason, man, because it is, in my humble opinion, that good. And again, when you talk about what it's centered around, you know, that smoky kind of wood burning in a fireplace with the vanilla and roasted chestnut accord in here. This thing is absolutely fantastic. This could have been under any niche brand, it could have been the same name, but under a niche brand. And they could have charged $250 or higher for this, and I am sure people would have ran out and still bought this. It's that good. And of course, we're not even going to talk about how good the performance is. From the house of Replica, well, the Replica line from the house of Maison Margiela, this one is called By the Fireplace. All right, guys, this next fragrance actually comes from the house of Gucci, and this is Intense Oud. Intense Oud. Listen, I am pretty certain, in my opinion, this is probably the best, or definitely one of the top 3 fragrances that this designer brand of Gucci has ever done. Again, I won't go through a whole lot of the details on this one, but again, this is another oud-based fragrance. And when you talk about oud, I would say this and Costume National Soul, which I mentioned earlier on this list. And then maybe in a third place, Versace Oud Noir. The best oud fragrances you're going to find at the designer level. And again, most oud fragrances that I smell that I actually like that are niche, this pretty much stacks up with a lot of those fragrances as well. So check it out from the house of Gucci. It's Gucci Intense Oud. All right, this next fragrance actually comes from the house of Mugler, and this is Pure Malt. Pure Malt. This boozy whiskey fragrance is to die for. This is still to date one of my favorite boozy fragrances. It's so good. It's so good. It's so creative. Obviously, of course, you have the whiskey in here and really patchouli. And there's this kind of chocolatey cacao thing going on here, which of course may be coming from a combination of those with the patchouli in here. But this stuff, man, is top notch. Sadly, of course, this is another fragrance that, for whatever reason, has been discontinued. But it's good. It's really, really good. You talk about boozy scents. This is one of the best, hands down, when you talk about designer fragrances. This stuff is absolutely phenomenal. I love this stuff. I gotta always have this in my collection, man. This is as good as it gets from the house of Mugler. Again, this is Pure Malt. All right, when you talk about that kind of fresh profile with a little bit of sweet sexiness, i.e. fragrances like Creed's Original Santal, and fragrances that kind of fall into that genre, on the designer side of things, this is probably the best, definitely one of the best that I've ever smelled that kind of fit in that category. From the house of Chanel, this is Allure Homme. Allure Homme, and I have talked a lot about this fragrance, very glowingly I might add when I mention this fragrance, because it's so good, man. Again, when I talk about this fragrance, I always say this fragrance can teach a class on how a fragrance should develop. The development of this fragrance is absolutely top notch. High quality ingredients here, and what it's based on, you know, kind of that orange citrusy thing with some creaminess and then sweet tonka bean dry down. That's really what this fragrance is about in short, but it is absolutely phenomenal. Again, very well done, very well composed. And when you talk about those more fresher, again, citrus opening fragrances that dry down to a nice, sweet, creamy dry down, one of the best to ever do it. Again, it can teach any fragrance, including a lot of niche fragrances, a class on how a fragrance should develop. This is from the House of Chanel, and this is simply called the original Allure Homme. All right, guys, and last but not least on this list, one of the best amber fragrances I've ever put my nose on, and certainly in the designer realm of things, from the House of Miyake. This is called Noir Ombre. Noir Ombre. Now, a few years ago, the fragrance community was in an uproar when this fragrance came out, because everyone was up in arms about how good this fragrance was for an amber-based fragrance that was from the House of Miyake, that at the time wasn't going to break the bank. Now, with the increased popularity of the fragrance, of course, there was not soon to follow the fact that you could not find it anywhere. All right, so then of course it was said to be discontinued and all these things. And I just happened to be scrolling on FragranceNet a couple months ago, and voila, it was on FragranceNet, and I picked it up for about 70 bucks. I'm pretty sure it's sold out again, guys. But if you can ever find this fragrance, if you like amber, you gotta try this stuff. It's really good. From the House of Miyake, this is called Noir Ombre. Hey guys, but that's it. That's my time. I hope you enjoyed my list today. What are some of the fragrances you have in your collection that you feel that are designer fragrances that are just as good as a lot of niche fragrances that you have smelled? I would love to hear from you guys down in the comment section, so go ahead and drop those fragrances down below. As always, I sincerely appreciate your time and attention to these videos. I know you guys don't have to watch, but you do, and I sincerely appreciate it. And don't forget to make sure you take a few moments to go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you're sharing these videos out to some other folks out there that you think could use this information or find it entertaining. Because I'm your boy, Darian. I'm the Bowtie Fragrance Guy. I love to look good, and of course, I love to smell amazing. So until next time, guys, keep looking good, keep smelling even better. I'll catch you on the flip side.